What's going on, everybody? So I just got some old footage of Bloodborne here that I was just gonna go ahead and dump onto my channel. That way, I wasn't sitting in my excuse me, my capture gallery. I apologize for any extra breathing or any kind of nasal sounds. I'm just getting over a cold, so a lot of coughing, a lot of hacking, sneezing, etc., etc. So, Bloodborne is what I would consider Souls-like, due to the nature of the way that the Souls games are. Well, this was actually also produced by FromSoft. I think this was the creator. His name escapes me at the moment. The Souls formula was getting a bit tired, and I think, or at least he was getting tired of the things that they were doing. I remember reading things about Bloodborne before it came out, and I remember being incredibly resistant to the idea. I was very, very nervous about this whole thing, because it just seemed to not be a good idea. I was like, Dark Souls with guns, Lovecraft, what? But it just seems so much better. They get rid of the shield. In fact, there's a plank shield in the game, and they make a joke about the plank shield in the game. About it. Miyazaki, that was the creator of Dark Souls, but hang on, I'm gonna look it up here. So there are two shields. There's the wooden shield and the lock shield, and the lock shield is actually pretty decent. Oh, here we go. The wooden shield's description is a crude wooden shield used by the masses who have arisen to join the hunt. Hunters do not normally employ shields, ineffectual against the strength of beasts as they tend to be. Shields are nice, but not if they engender passivity. So basically what that's saying is that, the combat in Bloodborne is a lot more aggressive. A solid majority of it is about taking hits and continuing to come forward with that aggressiveness, because that's how you get your health back, or at least some of it. So what you want to do is you want to just go ahead and say fuck that shit. You don't want to deal with shields. You don't want to deal with even dodging. In some cases, a lot of the dodges are more like a dash. The iframes are roughly the same, but you want to make sure you stay aggressive. And I really enjoy Bloodborne for that aspect, because you can get sort of the same kind of thing from Dark Souls, but what's interesting about Bloodborne is that it forces you to do so. The first time I played Bloodborne, there was a time where I owned a PS4 and then I got rid of it. Then I had an Xbox for a little bit, like months and months later, and then I got rid of the Xbox. Or, well, no, I bought another PS4, and I had both for some time, and then I just found myself not playing the Xbox, so then I gave that away. But the first time I played Bloodborne was shortly after it came out, and I remember finding the shield and being very excited, because I was like, oh, okay, cool, because I was used to, maybe not turtling, but I was used to having the shield, and it made me feel a lot better when it came to using it against enemies. I mean, your stamina gets broken so easily with the shield. It is literally not worth using. But somehow myself attempting to play the game, thought, well, at least it's better than nothing. So here, what I'm doing is the chalice dungeons. I can't remember exactly why I was doing them. I think it was because I was trying to get the old threaded cane, because I believe the blood ruin slots, it had more of them. The threaded cane and the hunter's pistol is far and away my favorite weapons in the game. Just for the simple fact of the speed of them. The threaded cane reminds me a lot of the long swords from Dark Souls, and the hunter's pistol, you know, is a little bit more of a plus the whole Castlevania whip thing, you know, that whole bit. But the hunter's pistol is a little bit more of a reflexive weapon. Like the shotgun will has a bigger parry window, but the pistol, just in my opinion, seems to be a bit more precise, and I prefer that a lot better. I like the window a lot better. So I'm just running through this challenge dungeon. I believe I was searching for the old, you know, the more rare versions of the hunter's tools, and enjoying it a good bit. And I believe I was also trying to get a hold of blood chunks, and I believe that there's certain trophies. I was at one point pursuing a platinum on Bloodborne, but unfortunately I just wasn't able to make it work. Because there's certain items that are associated with chalice dungeons, and certain items you need to use in order to generate certain chalice dungeons. This reminds me a whole lot of Sen's Fortress, and you know, obviously the expected occurs, you know, the same way it would in Sen's Fortress. But there's certain items that you can only acquire from chalice dungeons. I don't recall them at the moment. But unfortunately, due to the way that the chalice dungeons are generated, there's certain bosses that need to be beaten for certain trophies, but they have to be generated in a certain way. These enemies I do not like. I tried to go ahead and get him with the charged R2, but unfortunately it just didn't work out. But the Queen of Yardrat, Jesus, that's a planet in Dragon Ball. But Yardam, I don't remember what it's called. But the Queen of the area in Bloodborne, and hang on just a minute, Yarnum, the Queen of Yardam. But unfortunately, due to the way that the certain tunnels, chalice dungeons are generated, you need to have certain items like tomb mold and ritual blood and things like that, and then some of them require even more of them. So unfortunately, in order to make a whole lot of that to work, you need to play in order to get the amount of ritual blood and the certain other items you need in order to get to a certain generated dungeon, in order to face certain bosses and to find certain items, you need a whole lot of that stuff. And usually it involves, you know, playing through the chalice dungeons several times, and in addition to that, you know, probably getting to New Game Plus 3 or 4 in order to find, you know, just the vast quantities of certain items that you need in order to progress. What's really interesting about the chalice dungeons is because they're procedurally generated, all of them are unique kind of in their own way. You know, they all have their own codes. Like, you can generate a code of a certain dungeon that you created, and a lot of the times that's what you can use to find certain items, because, you know, some people, being so into this game, have been able to ascertain, you know, what items do what, and have been able to figure out what codes generate what dungeons. So, you know, it can be a little bit easier, you know, and that sort of gets rid of a lot of the requirement of playing through a great deal of the chalice dungeons in order to progress to the ones that hold the items that you want to get, or the boss that you want to kill. But, you know, unfortunately, because of that requirement, or even with those spreadsheets, you still need to acquire the items in order to do that chalice ritual, to continue to do that. So it's you know, kind of a terrible situation, just overall. But well, not terrible, but it's just one of those unfortunate situations overall. But you know, I truly do believe that Bloodborne is a fantastic game. It doesn't really hold the same power, I suppose the word would be, that Dark Souls, the original. And even in my mind, you know, I miss, maybe not miss, but you know, I hold a lot of reverence for the first Dark Souls game. By the time I gotten around to playing the third one, I wasn't really as jazzed about the Souls games as I was anymore. Demon Souls I really enjoyed. I attempted to platinum that one, but when it comes to World Tendency, and how you have to complete certain quests in you know, the classic FromSoft style of there being 10 different fail states and having to complete something in an incredibly precise way, or else you've just screwed the whole thing up. And pure Bladestone, I tried for hours and hours and hours to get myself a pure Bladestone, and it just never happened. And by the time I had utilized the peer-to-peer system to acquire some of those items, you know, it was just too late. Which, you know, really makes me wish that they would add Demon Souls to PlayStation Now, or, you know, remaster it entirely. You know, there's been some buzz about remastering Demon Souls, but I believe that the IP is owned by some third-party company now, so I'm not going to hold my breath. But I did really enjoy Demon Souls while I played it. So I don't really remember the build that I'm playing with. I think I'm mostly spec'd into skill due to both of my weapons being heavily skill-based. I don't think I have any blood tinge or anything of that nature, so I think I'm like a 40-15 skill strength build. My health is relatively high. And I feel like unless you spec into something like blood tinge along with skill, you know, the builds seem a little bit more straightforward just due to the lack of weapons in the game. But what's really interesting about, you know, the lack of weapons is that you can, in doing that, oh yeah, the undead giant, but in doing that, having a lack of weapons, you can really, because unfortunately in Dark Souls, and especially Dark Souls 2, and to a lesser extent Dark Souls 3, unfortunately due to the vast array of weapons, you know, and just all the different things, like in Dark Souls 1, you know, for example, there's the longsword, and then there is 7 other different weapons that have the exact same move set, and I slaughter that guy, you know, with one parry. But I really like that cape dusting. This is my favorite outfit. I'm wearing Gascoigne's hat. That was almost really bad. So it looks like there was already some audio on this clip, but I don't believe I ever uploaded this. I'm pretty sure I'm on New Game Plus, or if I'm not on New Game Plus, I'm on... No, this is like the beginning of my playthrough. So I'm just going to record myself over this audio because it's just, you know, relatively useless, and I'm pretty sure I'm just talking to myself. But I will attempt to...
You have fucking Dark Souls 2?
I guess so.
Have you played it?
Not past like the first a little bit.
Yeah, what made you stop?
If we could play together, like I never got co-op working.
You never got what?
Like to play with somebody. Cause you gotta do shit to like connect with somebody or whatever it is.
Yeah, you have to get far enough to get the soapstone to unlock it, and then I have to put down my sign, and you have to be in human form. It's a lot of work.
So
but,
it really sounds like I was just
game,
discussing
like, you know,
the...
I could play through the whole game without summoning anybody.
We were just discussing the co-op. Unfortunately, due to the, you know, a lot of my friends don't play games like Dark Souls or Bloodborne simply because of, you know, the the skill ceiling.
But,
You
you
know,
know,
I'm not saying I'm any
sometimes
better,
bosses
but it's
are
just, you know, the
stuff.
game can be incredibly frustrating.
I definitely like to be summoned into other people's worlds and help them, but I don't personally do it for my own.
There's that parry window on the Hunter's pistol. I really enjoy that.
Mike was telling me he's got fucking Bloodborne. I was like, dude. I was like, hit me up on Bloodborne. That's what I'm playing right now because it's almost Halloween. This game's all about blood and scary Lovecraft things. It's the Bloodborne time of year.
But Bloodborne is a masterfully crafted game. You know, it really does have that FromSoft, you know, magic attached to it, to where they've just, you know, there's enough lore, and there's enough keeping you paying attention that, you know, of things that you know, but equally, you know, in addition to that, there's things in the, you know, kind of Soulsborne formula that I'm not a big fan of. You know, being directly and intentionally unclear about things. You know, but I feel like it would kind of lose some of that magic if they were to explain a lot of the nuance of, you know, what's going on. But, you know, it would be appreciated in some aspects if certain things were explained.
I know I had problems with the house when we first moved in Michigan because, like I could sit on the blanket chest that was, like, right near the TV, but I was, like, too close. And if I laid back by the headboard, like, I was too far, I would, like, kind of lay on my side, like, in the middle of the bed, but then I was looking at the camera. I was looking at the TV, like, sideways.
You see, I can't, like, sit sideways because I have a headset on.
Yeah, I can't do it either.
I think I'm going to just go ahead and let this audio between Douglas and I play out, you know, along with the rest of this clip, so... Alright guys, you know, this was just a footage dump of some old footage on my capture gallery, and I hope you enjoy it and come back for more.
Wretched ants trying to boot heaven.
The depravity. Backstab the shit out of this guy. Rat. And this is like the little girl, I think. Yes.
Alright, so it sounds like a lot of that audio between Douglas and I is finally over, so I'm going to go ahead and record another bit of audio over this. That way there's some commentary through the gameplay. So I'm in... I don't believe this is Central Yarnum. This is relatively early on in the game, when you fight the Cathedral Beast. Unfortunately, although I was in the Chalice dungeon in the last clip, and I was able to slaughter that prey, the Cathedral Beast is going to unfortunately take my life, and I don't have any footage of myself defeating it, so you're just gonna have to watch my, you know, my inevitable and bloody murder. But as I was saying earlier, I was getting a little off track. I really enjoy the magic and the nuance of a lot of the Soulsborne games. Like, especially in the first Dark Souls, you know, you watch that opening cinematic and they explain, you know, a lot of the background. You get this huge exposition dump, and in that exposition dump, they explain the Knights of Gwyn, they explain, you know, Gravelord Neo, Seath the Scaleless. You know, it's all explained and it's all laid out for you, and I think that that's just an amazing thing. You know, it's that opening cinematic, you know, still gives me goosebumps. Bloodborne does something similar, but, you know, there's almost something eerie. Well, there is something eerie about Bloodborne. Because Bloodborne, it's all about blood. You know, you're this foreign traveler who came from a supposed distant land in order to find a cure for some sort of disease, some crippling disease that can't be cured under normal means. And it's just incredible, you know. And then that's it. You're just some guy. Like, you're just some guy who got, you know, a blood treatment. You know, and that's where a lot of this, a lot of the enemies come from, because in Yharnam, the you know, imbibing the old blood, you know, is used in treatment. So when I first started playing this game, I was under the assumption that these wheelchair guys was that same wheelchair guy from the beginning of the game, but as it turns out, it's not. It's just some guy in a wheelchair with a machine gun. But I was under the impression, or well, so you're just some guy. Like, you know, you wake up in this crazy nightmare realm, and even the endings don't explain it. You know, you can become a great one by the ending, and then, you know, the doll picks you up. You can either leave the dream, and you wake up, and the sun's rising in Yharnam, or, you know, he kills you, and it just... or you can defeat him and then the Great One, and it's just an incredible thing. You know, it really harkens back to some of that bizarro Lovecraft stuff, especially things like this. You know, it's got these crazy tentacles, the big arm, the incredibly erratic movements, and I think, you know, you can really, in Dark Souls 3, you can really see the influence of the Bloodborne's bosses in the Dark Souls 3 bosses. Erratic movements, different phases, because, you know, especially with the Cleric Beast, I called it the Cathedral Beast, especially with the Cleric Beast, you know, as it becomes more damaged and the further and further you get into the boss battle, the more erratic, the more angry, the crazier it gets. You know, and it really gives off this animalistic vibe, you know, and this demons thing. And you can see a lot of the evolution of the bosses. You know, in Demon Souls, some of the bosses, like Flame Lurker and things like that, you can see parts of Flame Lurker in the original design for that. Like, Flame Lurker was a little, you know, I wouldn't want to say straightforward, but Flame Lurker is a bit, you know, I think the technology just wasn't there at the time to give them the Flame Lurker that they were really searching for. But, you know, I think, when I think of, you know, what their original vision was for that, I think they were thinking of something akin to what, you know, a lot of these beast-like bosses are. But the Cleric Beast is one of my favorite bosses in Bloodborne, because it really is, it's like a set piece. It's an entirely optional boss, but I find myself accidentally fighting it every time, because Bloodborne is a little hard to understand and navigate through. That and the Bloodstarved Beast, I end up, like, fighting both of them, you know, very early on in the game, simply because I'm a moron, and I you know, realize that I do not know where I'm going. When it comes to games like Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, I know exactly where to go, how to get there, what to do when I get there. But with games like Demon Souls, Dark Souls 3, and Bloodborne, I don't know those games as well. I haven't played those ones nearly as much as I've played the other ones. And I sort of lose what I'm supposed to be doing when I play these games because I'm just not as familiar with them. So I'm really, reeling at this point. See, now the beast is powering up. So now its damage resistance is up. Its damage it deals out is higher. And I'm trying to reacclimate myself. I think this was on the heels of completing Dark Souls Remastered. And I wasn't used to the aggressiveness of a lot of the bosses. And I wasn't used to being as aggressive. In fact, I accidentally panic fire several times. Trying to bring up my shield that I don't have, and I keep trying to throw out random R2s and things like that because I'm trying to ascertain as to what damage this enemy might be weak to that my cane is capable of giving out, like thrust attacks, slash attacks, and then the whip itself. And I go ahead and hit it with a charged R2, and that seemed to do something. So I go ahead and I keep trying to hit it with thrust attacks, thinking that maybe that's what I need to do. So at this point in the fight, I'm sort of realizing that I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. I'm holding my own, at least relatively well. I mean, it's not flashy or pretty or anything of that nature, but I'm doing pretty okay. But I'm realizing that this enemy is basically whittling me down. Because although it's at, just under a half of a health bar, I'm at half health and I've only got 4 blood vials left. And I realize right about this time, and I start searching the stage for more blood vials because I'm realizing that I am likely not going to be able to outlast this enemy, with the amount of blood vials I have left before I'm unable to continue on with the fight, because I'm eating a lot of hits and I'm using a lot of blood vials. But I'm trying to get the parry off on him, but some of the bosses, their parry windows are a little difficult to understand, a little difficult to see. So unfortunately, I'm coming to that realization. So I'm thinking maybe I can get a couple of cheap hits in while it's powering up again. The enemy is becoming a lot more erratic. It's jumping around a whole lot more. Excuse me. And I'm now at 1 blood vial, and I'm just under a full health bar, and the enemy is at about a quarter. The cleric beast is essentially, by this point, the cleric beast has defeated me. I would have to use this next blood vial and never get hit again before the end. And just due to my inability to adapt to this, just because I believe I might have just got done playing Dark Souls 2. It was either Scholar or Dark Souls Remastered. I really don't remember. And then I ended up taking a hit right there, and unfortunately didn't become a beast. Wasn't crazy or anything like that, but I unfortunately died. Well, thanks for letting me dump this footage off. Have a good one.